to the Q Code. Your curiosity quest starts here.
Hey, welcome in everybody to another episode of the Q Code podcast. And we want to also thank everybody who joined us last week for our scary stories to tell on a podcast. If you haven't listened to that one yet, I highly suggest going back and listening to it. We got 3 awesome stories. Well, we have 2 okay stories and 1 really awesome story. one story.
Yours is super awesome.
All I'm saying is 1 story that pretty much followed all the rules that we set forth, and then 2 others that were kind of like, and then 1 other that was pretty close, and then another one that just broke all the rules.
So are you saying yours broke all the rules?
Yours, Daniel. Yours broke the rules. Doesn't matter though. It was still it's still a good story. I mean, we had fun reading. Well, I don't think we had fun writing those, but we had fun reading them and the reaction that we got. So thank you everybody for your participation and listening to those. So hopefully we'll be able to do something like that again in the near future. But today...
What are we learning today, Trav?
We've got some good stuff. And by the way, you might hear or notice the absence of one other voice. And, well, that is Alan. He is our fallen brother for the designated... week of the month.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's that time of the month again.
Where Alan is feeling a little under the weather. So typically we have another Barnes family member step in, but...
None of them could make it
today. So I
reached out to Tracy, I reached out to Steve, and then Tracy even had reached out to her friend Megan, who wants to be on the podcast sometime. But she couldn't make it tonight because she was going to a haunted house, apparently.
Okay.
So I don't know what's more fun, a haunted house or
sitting here not knowing what to do as Danny and I talk about dinosaurs today.
Yeah.
So that is our topic. We're the question for today is what really happened to the dinosaurs? There's a lot of theories out there, and
a lot of things that changed over the years, theories that you probably, I have no idea, but it'd be curious to see like what the theories were back like 100 years ago or 200 years ago.
So basically Danny and I jumped in a time machine, went back just to take a look at what actually happened. And now we have the real, outcome of what happened millions of years ago. So
we witnessed it from our little hole in the ground.
And we're going to be talking about that for the main segment. We also have a quick question of the day. But before we get to that quick question...
So we have a before.
And I only want to talk about this just because it was just a weird thing that happened to me. And at work, was it Wednesday? So yesterday. Okay. Well... We are recording on a Thursday, so yesterday.
Yes. Typically, Wednesday does come before Thursday.
So, for those of you who don't know, I mean, obviously, this is not the only thing that we do. We have other jobs. If you've listened to any of the dreams that Danny has, you know that he works at a bank. And... But and every once in a while I mention what I do, but I work for a construction company in their human resource department. Now, part of that, we go around to different job fairs and different events, just meeting people, seeing who wants to join the ranks in the construction industry. But so we went to an equal opportunity job fair, which was a free job fair held at the Downtown City Library. If you know anything about the Downtown City Library, you know that there's a bunch of skeptical people walking and just kind of hovering around there.
By skeptical, what do you mean?
Skeptical meaning
just because they don't have homes doesn't mean they're skeptical.
Some shady peeps, man. There's just some shady peeps. And I'm not stereotyping. I might be stereotyping, but so
no, I think they there are some nice benches in that area, and then across the street from that, there's that big what is that building? That like it looks kind of like a cathedral, but for people who aren't from Salt Lake City, I think it's the city building.
Oh yeah, it's the city hall.
Yeah, but it looks like a cathedral more than like a city hall should look in my head.
Yeah. But so this was a 4-hour long job fair, and we did not talk to a lot of great prospects. We had a couple, but everybody started cleaning up, and so we followed suit. Everybody was gone at this time. Like we were the last ones cleaning up our table and everything. And this guy wanders in, and he's like, "Oh, you guys are done?" I said, "Yeah, but if you want to come talk to us, come talk to us. We can answer any questions. We can tell you what we're all about." And he just kind of starts telling us that, you know, he's just been having a real hard time finding a job. And, you know, we said, well, because he said that he had a little bit of a background. And, he had a little bit of a troubled past. And people aren't, you know, once they see what he had done, they're pretty much, you know, denying him employment.
So are we saying that he has some kind of like record on the books kind of background?
Like, I mean, when people say that, I'm thinking, okay, it's got to be some type of a felony or something like that. But like, how bad is it? Like, what is it? Is it just like domestic dispute that kind of got out of hand? Is it, theft? Is it a drug related charge or what have you? So, you know, we're telling him like, I mean, in our business where we consider ourselves to be background friendly. So, you know, we're not going to bring in just anybody, but we understand that people make mistakes, and we're going to give them a shot if they can, you know, prove to us that they can actually, you know, turn their life around and focus on having a job and showing up and doing everything that they need to. But so why I bring this up is because as we're sitting there talking to him, and, you know, neither of us asked what he did. Mm-hmm. That's always a question, but, you know, you don't just come out and say, well, what'd you do? Maybe we could, but we didn't in that point. And he says, yeah, you know, I'm not just asking for like some big high paying job. I'm literally asking for whatever the lowest they have, and they still don't give it to me. And then he said,
wait, who's they in his?
Just they, employers.
Just anyone.
Anyone.
Okay.
And he said, I mean, I just have a homicide on my record.
Jeez.
And I'm like, oh, okay. So now I'm like,
I better give him a job.
I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, we're literally the only people in this room. I do not want to piss this guy off. I don't know what he did. And he's like, yeah, it was like a little while ago. It was like 6 months ago. I was like, 6 months? You literally ended somebody's life 6 months ago, and you're out here, and he claims he was on parole. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, are you saying parole, or are you just saying you are skipping bail or whatever it is?
Fugitive.
You're a fugitive of the law. So
yeah, if he just killed somebody 6 months ago, why would he not be in prison?
I'm thinking the same thing. I don't know. I didn't inquire anymore, but I told him, I kind of told him straight up. He's like, well, you know, I mean, I can see from an employer's side, it's a little bit of a liability. So, but I told him without, telling him no. I was like, well, you can go to our website and drop in an application. I was sure to make sure I, took his name down so that if we see that application, we definitely do not contact. But anyway.
So maybe he just lives in that world that we talked about a few weeks back. That I believe is the video game world, and I had the question of like, so how would you treat murders if you have like multiple lives? If you killed somebody on their first life, would it be as bad as killing him on their
Obviously,
third
he
life?
doesn't think so.
So that's what I'm saying is like for him, he's like, it was like their first life.
All I did was kill someone.
Jeez.
Should I not get a job? Should I not be awarded employment?
He might have a good point though if he came to you and he's like, all I did was kill somebody, And honestly, if you give me a job, that gives me something to do. Because if you don't, I'm just going to be out murdering again. And now you're in a quandary.
Up to you. If you don't give me a job, it's their lives on your hands.
Now it's on you.
But anyway, so I just wanted to throw out, it's just so crazy that like the thoughts that are going through people's head. Like, yeah, no duh. This is why you're not employed, because you murder people.
Yeah.
But
well, like you said, like,
and I mean, he's not convicted or whatever. Obviously, he's walking around. So I don't know what the deal is. I probably should have, maybe I could have inquired a little bit more just to make the story.
But if he
a little
wasn't
bit more
like
interesting.
convicted, then you would think that he wouldn't say anything to
Yeah,
you.
I have no clue. No clue what was going
I
on.
really want a job. Just FYI, I killed somebody. No one knows about it, but I did.
We did have just a little quick short story. We did have another guy who came in and interviewed, and then when we did the background check, found that he did time recently for armed robbery for a bank.
What?
And
I think he applied it.
that hits close to home for you.
I know.
But anyway, when they confronted him about it, this was before I actually worked for the company. And they asked him about it. He goes, "Yeah, that was just kind of a dumb thing." He goes, I wasn't actually in there. It was my mom, and I was the getaway car." So, like, he was just driving his
So
mom
he was just
around
guilty by proxy
because his mom was the one who robbed the bank, and he was just driving to get her away. But they both got caught, and now he's out, and they asked him, they're like, "Well, how much money did you get?" And he goes, "Well, obviously not a lot, because I'm here asking for a job." So, just the interesting things that you run into in this type of business. But
Probably not the best parenting.
yeah. But all right, let's get to our quick question of the day, which is, if you could, what one thing would you erase from existence?
All right. So, Trav, you know me, and I, first of all, want to applaud myself for not calling you to clarify this question.
Okay, thank you.
So I just took it upon myself to take the question and interpret it how I see fit. So the first thing I came up with, and I know what you're going to say is like, you already screwed up, because it says, what one thing would you get rid of? But the first thing I thought of was pedophiles.
Yeah, that's it.
And then I was like, because they suck. I don't want them. And I would be happy if they were gone. Mm-hmm. I don't really see a purpose that they fill that's necessary, other than, I guess, the yang to your ying. But
Yeah, they're not like God's creatures in the sense that it's like, you're like, can't we just get rid of spiders? And it's like, well, spiders have a part in God's plan too.
yeah, they're part of
It'd
the
be
food
like,
chain.
if we didn't have pedophiles, who would kidnap all the kids?
But I X-nayed that off my list because it was people instead of a thing. So I didn't know if I was supposed to take it as in like, what were you going to get rid of? Get rid of what one thing would you get rid of from existence, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have, I mean, there was no real big rules. It's just read the question and answer it. So I don't really care how you answer it. If you want to get rid of pedophiles, let's get rid of pedophiles.
Okay, so number one, pedophiles. Do you have more than one thing?
So here, before you continue, I'll tell you my mind, or I guess the train of thought that I had. So, originally, I think when we were talking about this, we're like, okay, if you could get rid of one thing in existence, what would it be? And I was like, mosquitoes.
Yeah.
I hate mosquitoes.
And we had a brief conversation on that, thinking somewhere in my biology, somewhere along the line, I remember learning mosquitoes actually are not necessary for the food
They
chain.
just spread disease. So I'm okay with getting rid of those. But that's not my answer. In fact, so if you are familiar with Utah, and we have a radio station, X96, and their morning show is called Radio from Hell. And they have a running segment called the list of things that must go. And so I think in the future we should probably do something like this, because a lot of my stuff was kind of ending up situated. Like, I wouldn't necessarily Like, if I'm picking one thing, it wouldn't be any of these things, but I would be happy if they were gone.
Yeah.
So I'm not
basically you're saying you have a long list.
I have a long list just like of things that bug me, and I'm like, yeah, I'd be happy. Just for example, people that go to school and drag those backpacks with wheels. Like I
was gonna say, but I guess you do spend quite a bit of time at school, huh? Like at schools,
well,
like
yeah,
because of your job.
Yeah.
Because at first I was like, when are you at school?
No, this is seriously from like forever ago. It drives me crazy. Like when I was going to college and I'd see kids, they looked like they were going to the airport. I'm like, how many books do you have in there?
I do kind of remember
like
that.
enough.
Some people when we went to like the University of Phoenix,
Yeah.
and you'd walk into class and they were wheeling in
Wheeling
there
a
like.
book.
But I think you have like their laptop and stuff in it too.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Nah, so it's things like that I think in a future segment we should do something like that. But I'm going to be real. So the one thing I came up with, and it's not hard to come up with, I think this would be a very generic answer.
Yeah.
But I would love to see it gone. And I think everybody else on Earth would. And that would just literally be cancer. Like, I've never been personally affected by cancer. Knock on wood. I don't think we have any wood in this room, so I can't. There's a wall.
There's probably wood inside
knock on
the wall.
sheetrock. But I've never been personally affected by it. My mom had, like, she had thyroid cancer and she had a tumor in her knee when I was younger. Of course, back then I didn't know like severity of it and things like that. Obviously, she's still around. She's been cancer free pretty much for 25 years. So, she's good. But there are so many people, and specifically kids. Like when my son was like 3 months old, he contracted RSV. Which, if you don't know what that is, it's just a virus, a respiratory virus in your, in his lungs.
But it's scary for little, like, babies.
Well, yeah, because it can turn real bad. Yeah. And so luckily we caught it in time that it didn't escalate, but he did have to spend a couple of days in the hospital. And so we were in there with him, and we're up at Primary Children's Hospital at the University of Utah, and it just sucks. I mean, you go in there, I don't know, have you ever been in there? Like with your kids or anything like that?
Not with my kids, but I've been there before, yeah.
So you go through there and you see all these kids that are just so sick, and majority of them have, illnesses like some type of cancer. And you're sitting there thinking, like, no kid should have to go through that.
Yeah. And then, but like, and it's the cliche thing, but it's surprising how many of those kids handle it like champs, though.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they just still choose to see, like, life and the bright side of things, you know?
Well, I think in a sense, too, it's just because, like, majority, especially, like, younger kids, like, they don't actually grasp the concept of death, and so it's easier to live with the ailments, with the cancer, and deal with the procedures that they have to go through. But still, no kid should ever have to go through that. And if I could pick one thing, like, there's a lot of sicknesses out there, but I think if you eliminated cancer, it would just, maybe some pharmaceutical companies would go under, but, screw them. So,
well, they obviously haven't been that effective so far.
Yeah.
But if you got rid of cancer, wouldn't that get rid of like 1/12 of the population?
What?
Because isn't cancer like one of the astrological signs?
Oh, shut up. You're so dumb. Danny?
Is it though? Like, because you have Libra.
Yes.
Are you a Cancer?
No, I'm a Gemini.
Who's a Cancer? Let us know.
I would not be getting rid of anybody who was born in the time of the
Cancer.
Okay, I'm talking about tumors, growths.
So you're talking about when your genes stop growing the way they should, and they have a mind of their own, which is basically what Cancer is.
Yes.
Like a mutation of your genes, right?
So I'm fine if we get rid of cancer. How about everybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, well, that's a good one, Trav, because I sat there for a long time, and after pedophiles, I was like, I don't know what I get rid of. So I sat there.
Think about it.
But
if we got rid of
cancer is
all
like-
pedophiles and all
cancer.
cancer, the children would be safe. I mean, there'd be other things, but like
that gets rid of like
get rid
the
of a
two
lot
biggest
of dangers.
things. Yeah, two of the biggest things that they have to worry about. So my list is definitely not as in depth and noble as yours. But one thing I was like, do you know what bugs me? And I actually had a post on my personal social media about this a couple months ago. I don't know if you remember it. But if I could get rid of one thing, it would be freaking when they have bulk pricing that costs a lot more than the smaller quantity pricing on a per item basis.
Okay. Like at Costco.
Meaning like my example from a couple months ago, but I see it all the time when you go to the store or whatever but when I went to Carl's Jr. like 2 months ago and my kids really wanted chicken stars because not that they taste any better than a normal chicken nugget, but they just like that they're in the shape of a star. Mm-hmm. And so I go up there and they're like, Dad, we're so hungry. Because normally I would just get them like a 4-piece chicken star. And they're like, we want more than that. And I'm like, okay, let me ask them how much, what quantities they have. And I said, what quantities do you guys sell chicken stars in? And the kid comes over and is like, it's like 4-piece, 6-piece, and 9-piece. I'm like, okay. How much are the different ones? And he's like, 4-piece is $1.
I do remember this. I think we talked about it on another episode.
It's like 6-piece is $3.49 and a 9-piece is $4.49. And I'm like, what? Because if you dollar cost average that out, for the 4-piece it's 25 cents per chicken nugget, for the 6-piece it's 58 cents per chicken nugget, and for the 9-piece it's 50 cents per chicken nugget. So you're paying twice as much or more if you buy the other one. So what did I do? I bought 4 pieces.
Yeah, might as well.
But it bugs me because now I had to buy extra packaging and have 4 orders.
So we're getting rid of pedophiles, cancer, and extra charges for bulk items.
Yep. And then another thing I was like, this bugs me is, have you ever tried to open like a candy package? Because I have to open lots of candy packages now that I have kids. And
Sure.
it's like, it could be like gummies or gummy worms or whatever, like those candy packages like that you get at the gas station.
Yep.
Yeah. So I hate the ones that are freaking sealed with like industrial glue or whatever it is. And they're just like, they don't tear open like very easily. But you have to, now I get stuck in this situation where I'm trying to open the candy, but it's taking quite a bit of force. But I can't have so much force that I like just rip the bag open and everything spills out, right?
Exactly.
So now I look like a sad old man because I'm trying so hard to like put the right amount of force, like enough force, but not too much force, that I shake ever so slightly. And my wife is always like, what's wrong with you? And because I'm like, she's like, oh my gosh. So I hate bags of candy that have freaking industrial glue on them.
Okay.
So yeah. Pedophiles,
Cancer,
bulk pricing that's out of whack,
and industrial glue on candy wrappers or
Yeah.
packages.
And my other two that I had, and these all only take like 5 seconds on. One is just like professional sports that do not, like coaches that do not make optimal decisions, because the point of sports is to win the game. And anyone who makes suboptimal decisions that causes them to have a lesser chance to win the game, that's, to me, is just maddening. And then finally is I have OCD with some stuff.
No.
I don't know if you remember this, Trav, but I don't think that they should have volume levels that are anything but even numbers and multiples of 5.
What is there that is not even that you've seen?
Like 31.
Where?
Volume level 31.
On what?
On any device. Like if you go in your car, there's a volume level 1, 2, 3.
So why
4.
can't it be one, or why couldn't it be an odd?
Because I don't like it. Volume should always be on an even number and or a multiple of 5. So the volume control should be 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10.
So confusing.
12, 14, 15, 16, 18, 20, and so on.
Yeah, no, it will never happen. And I disagree. I don't think that we need to get rid of regular volumes.
I drive my wife nuts because every time she'll like turn up the volume on the TV and she'll like turn it up to 13 and stuff. And so I either have to turn it down to 12 or up to 14. Like, cause or else I'll like develop a tick. I can't watch it.
You're like convulsing over there. She's like, what is wrong with you? Like, I can't. Volume's on 13. It needs to be lower or higher.
So if the volume was on 13 while I was like watching some ridiculous coach make a poor decision on my football game and my kid is asking me to open their candy at the same time and I had just come from Carl's Jr., I will freaking punch a pedophile in the face.
Seems very specific. All right, there you go, guys. We're going to post about this, obviously, and so let us know what you would get rid of if there's one thing in the world that you would erase from existence. So, but let's move on to our the meat of the discussion here of what really happened to the dinosaurs.
The human race will have every opportunity to improve.
And if they don't?
Ask Noah.
You're a madman.
There are more than a dozen extinction-level events before even the dinosaurs got theirs. When the Earth starts to settle, God throws a stone at it. And believe me, he's winding up. We have to evolve. There's no room for the weak.
Yes, Trav, there's no room for the weak. So I think it would be interesting sometime to learn about what all those other extinction events were. What do you think?
Yeah.
Are you worried about extinction?
No.
Really?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. I feel like there's other things to worry about. I don't.
There is, I mean, it's, I'm trying to remember what the name, there's a name for it. It's anything that basically could end the existence of humans.
Mm-hmm.
Existential thing. I believe it's like existential crisis or something like that. Anyway, but there's a lot of people out there that's what they focus on, is just what could happen that would just wipe us out. And I think it's fine to think about, but I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't say that
it's like a probability thing too.
Something that like nobody should worry about. You know, I mean, there's things like global warming. You know, that's something that we should at least pay attention to and try and figure out how to, you know, treat our Earth better.
Yeah, and I think that is one of them. Actually, I think that does fall into that category.
But I'm not one of those in the sense that I'm just sitting there. I mean, that's not my job. So, I mean, I'm just not going to worry about it. I have other things to worry about. Like I've got to worry about my kid getting her homework done and turned in on time, and you know, making sure that my kids go to bed on time and things like that. So, like, yeah, like
if somebody came to you though and they offered you a job and said, "I'll pay you to just think about this stuff."
Yeah, sure, I'll think about it. They don't know how much I'm thinking about it because they cannot read my mind. So,
but they have a new mind reading device.
Okay. What about the dinosaurs?
Yeah, sometimes I get sidetracked on these other topics, but anyway, yeah. So to sum up, Trav and I wanted to just speak to you guys briefly today, kind of like a PSA about what really happened to the dinosaurs, because I think everyone should know that. I think we've all been lied to long enough from our teachers growing up.
Yeah.
Not that our teachers meant to lie to us, though.
So as we kind of get into this, there's a discussion that we wanted to have, and I don't know if you want to have it now. It almost kind of seems like this would be a perfect spot for it. But
Are you talking about like the evolution stuff?
No, I'm really talking about just kind of like what we learned in school.
Yeah. Because we can have a moment to talk about the evolution stuff a little later.
Yeah. So, in school, I'm sure in elementary, now I can't remember exactly when we learned about the dinosaurs. I know we had to have learned about something, some of it probably in elementary school. It's like, okay, well, there's dinosaurs and, this is kind of cool. The Tyrannosaurus Rex, the raptors and
Stegosaurus,
all those things.
Triceratops.
But where do they get off being like, this is what happened? Like how do they know?
Well, I mean, there's like always been theories, and like I said, it would be interesting to see what happened 100 years ago or 200 years ago or something like that. But now the more I think about it, I don't even know how long ago was when they first found like the first dinosaur fossils. So I don't think it was, honestly, it was probably like 150 years ago or something like that. So yeah, from that moment, I don't know how quickly it was before they had theories. Like, because first they're like, whoa, we found this giant creature. And then, because I mean, there's been evolution over even my lifetime, right? Mm-hmm. Like when we were kids, one of the big traits of dinosaurs was they had tails that dragged on the ground. So I think if you watch older movies, like meaning literally like back in the 80s and older, of anything with dinosaurs, like the dinosaurs' tails would just drag around on the ground.
Yeah, I think like in some of the older,
I'm trying to think,
like
Land Before Time. Did they drag on the ground in that one?
I don't think that one, but like I have in my head like maybe some of like the older kind of like monster flicks, maybe like a King Kong or something where
it's like claymation
guys, and their like tails are dragging on the ground. But yeah,
but that's what they thought, and it wasn't until like in the 80s that they kind of figured out like, oh, maybe they actually don't drag on the ground. And now that we have a better idea of how their skeletal structure worked and everything, we're pretty sure that they actually like were suspended in the air, you know, and not dragging on the ground. Other things are, at some point when I was a kid, my favorite dinosaur growing up was Brontosaurus. And then all of a sudden I was told when I was like 12 that Brontosaurus isn't real. They made a mistake. And so really it's a Patasaurus. And then when I was like...
how did they make a mistake? It's like, you named it. Yeah, but we made a mistake. What do you mean? What's the mistake?
Well, I think they put together like the wrong bones. Like they put two bones of like two different animals together. And then they thought it was from one. But then like
can't call it a Brontosaurus.
Like a few years later.
Yeah, we put two extra ribs in there from another one. Can't be a Brontosaurus.
But like, and then a few years later, all of a sudden they come back and they're like, just kidding. It wasn't a mistake. Brontosaurus is a thing. So
stop messing with our minds, scientists.
So in my lifetime, I've been told, hey, Brontosaurus, hey, he doesn't exist. Oh, hey, he does exist. So yeah, I think it's just very subjective. Like no matter how you look at it. And to be honest, even though we're like sitting here trying to tell you guys, like, we're telling you the facts. These are just the facts as far as mankind knows today. Mm-hmm. Who knows if tomorrow they're going to be like, whoa, never mind. Sorry, we totally messed up again. Mm-hmm. This is what happened, you know? Yeah.
So, we're in school and they're teaching us about dinosaurs. Now, there's a lot of different theories out there. So what are some of those theories?
So when I grew up, the two predominant theories that I can remember was one, there was like a massive earthquake that caused all of the volcanoes on Earth to erupt roughly at the same time. And then with all those volcanoes erupting, that pushed so much ash into the air that it covered the Earth in like a cloud of ash. And then that prevented the sun from being able to shine through. And then the plants couldn't perform photosynthesis and so on and so forth. The other one was the whole idea of an asteroid. But it was kind of the same thing as like, okay, an asteroid hit and then it pushed a ton of like dirt and
ash
dust into the air. And
covering the sun.
And that might have actually caused some volcanoes to erupt too. And then, long story short, again, it covered the earth, and then the sun couldn't get through. And then all of this, both of them led to basically the same end tale, which was once that happened, the plants died, and then the herbivores could no longer eat. And then they died, and then the carnivores couldn't eat them, so then they died off. And then, like, over the course of hundreds of years, they slowly died out as it's more than a species. I don't know what you would call it, though. Like,
yeah,
an animal kingdom,
a genus,
maybe. Yeah, dinosaur genus.
So, there's like we said, obviously there's various theories out there, and I think there's scientific evidence that can kind of support a lot of these things. But what we have recently watched, and you guys can watch it too, is a documentary on what really happened to the dinosaurs, and it's called The Day the Dinosaurs Died, right?
Yep. And it's a documentary made by Nova. But it's on Netflix.
Yes, you can find it there, and it's very interesting. Now, this is not like if you guys were or listened to a few episodes back where we talked about Bigfoot. We also watched a Netflix documentary, and that one we kind of were very critical of. And it was not our intention, but seriously, go watch it and you will have the hardest time not being super critical. Part of you will want to believe, but anyway, this isn't like that. It's not like I went into this documentary being like, okay,
I'm going to poke some holes in this.
I'm going to poke some holes in this theory. Or even going in saying like, okay, I don't believe dinosaurs ever existed, so prove it. I mean, you're going to have to prove that they lived first before you can tell me how they died. So it wasn't anything like that. And it was also only 45 minutes long, so it was a lot easier to watch than an hour and a half of some dude running around the forest looking at holes in the ground and sticks.
Well, I mean, he would throw in some action shots.
Oh, yeah.
From time to time, to keep things spiced up.
Da-da-dun, 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 jump the stream. Action shot. But, so yeah, this was a very interesting documentary. Now, I make the joke that it's about 15 minutes about dinosaurs. The other 30 minutes is pretty much spent on talking about rocks. But it's very important and why. So I'll let you kind of take...
So the reason they have to spend all the time on the rocks is because that's the evidence that they have. That's how the geologists are able to decipher, okay, because this is the story that the rocks and the fossils are telling us, that's why they're making the assumptions that they are. But I wanted to quickly tell you guys like a little bit of a story to kind of set this whole scene up. So here we go. All right, everyone. Imagine you're out with your family enjoying a nice summer picnic at the park. After a nice filling meal consisting of PBJs and baked lays, you lie down on the blanket to allow your lunch to begin digesting. While doing so, you enjoy the calming sight of a handful of fluffy white clouds slowly floating overhead. Suddenly, you notice something a bit strange in the sky. It appears to be a single star twinkling in the night. However, it's not even close to nighttime. In fact, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You watch as this small point of light slowly grows bigger and brighter, then finally streaks across the sky like the most spectacular shooting star you've ever seen. A few moments later, you're still sitting there thinking about how lucky you were to witness such an amazing sight. Then, without warning, you see a massive ball of light emanating into the far-off distance. At this point, you're getting a little concerned about what that was you just saw, and just thank your lucky stars that you weren't over there. After a few more minutes of nothing much happening, you begin to pack up your picnic items and get ready to go home for the day. As you finish putting the last of the picnic stuff in the back of your car and close the trunk, you happen to catch a glimpse of another shooting star just over the top of your vehicle. Once again excited, you call the rest of your family over to tell them about what you just saw. As they run over, you see another shooting star. then another, and another. Lucky us, you think. What did we do to deserve such a remarkable show? Now, you're no longer seeing just a few shooting stars streaking across the sky at one time, but instead start seeing hundreds, then thousands. Next thing you know, you feel a bead of sweat drip down your neck and onto your shoulder. It's at about that time you realize that the day had got a lot hotter than you expected it. Unfortunately, this is when things begin to get bleak. Unlike a frog in boiling water, you quickly recognize that it's not just warmer than you expected, but rather it's becoming uncomfortably hot. So hot that it starts to hurt. You jump into your car in hopes that you can crank up the AC in hopes that it will help you cool down. But it doesn't take long for you to look down at your arms and legs and see that the skin is starting to turn red. You start to see small blisters forming on your skin and can smell the stench of burning flesh. Still, it continues to get hotter and hotter as the body starts to go into shock and you begin to lose consciousness. Some of the last things you see and hear are the sounds of the car tires popping, then deflating, the car windows cracking and shattering. Several trees and shrubs in the area burst into flames. However, even after you're gone, this intense heat does not cease. Instead, it continues to get hotter and hotter. The pop tires on your car are now nothing more than a puddle of molten rubber. The blood in your body boils before you eventually incinerated. The whole world and everything you know in it is now on fire. Anyone lucky enough to somehow still be witnessing this gruesome scene surely figures that hell's wrath hath taken over the earth.
I don't know if I should just let this music play out. Yes, we will.
I try to time it.
I was, as I'm watching the time on that, I was like, okay, yeah, he had to have practiced this a few times.
Well, I wouldn't say I practiced it a few times. I did do one read through.
Oh, okay.
In my head.
Okay.
And apparently I'm slower reading in real life than I am in my head. Which worked out because I had a few extra seconds before left over. But so anyway, the reason I wrote that little story was to give you guys an idea of what it was like to be a dinosaur on that fateful day, the last day that they were alive.
So
does that paint a picture for you, Trav?
So what a lot of the other theories discuss is that the extinction of the dinosaurs was actually a slow process that spanned over hundreds
years,
yeah.
or potentially hundreds of years,
yeah.
or even longer. Yeah.
But what this theory is suggesting that with the scientific evidence that they use from digging down into the, I don't want to say Earth's core. They did not go into the Earth's core. They just dug down.
As they excavate various sites and break down, you can see it like on the sides of cliffs and stuff like that. You can see. Yeah,
it's basically when you're looking at a rock formation, or let's say you're looking at a tree. You cut a tree down, you see the rings. That's kind of like giving you the history of that tree, right? How old, how long the tree's been there. You can do the same thing with rock formations.
You can even tell when were the wet years because they're with the tree, and which ones were the dry or the drought years. But yeah, exactly. With rocks, they also tell a story.
Yeah, so that's basically what they did. And with these, as they dug further and further down in a specific area, they were able to pretty much tell the story of this meteor that hit the Earth millions of years ago that eventually ended up wiping out the dinosaurs. But like I said, in the many theories, it was a long, drawn-out process. But this is talking about how this was basically one day.
Yeah.
One day, this happened, and they were all gone.
And some researchers and scientists even will tell you that it was not just one. I mean, it all happened within one day. But from the moment that the asteroid, and we can get into that in just a minute, entered the Earth's atmosphere until basically when they figure all the dinosaurs had died was less than 2 hours.
Crazy.
So, yeah. It's like a super fast global event that occurred. And so back to the whole asteroid idea, because that is something that I grew up with, was probably the predominant theory and has been my entire life. And if it's been in mine, I'm sure it has been in yours too, Trav. But talking about the asteroid a little bit. So basically this asteroid that hit the Earth, the problem is they never really, the hard thing was trying to decipher how much damage an asteroid would cause, if that makes sense. So, and finding like evidence to kind of prove the theories and models, because in the documentary it talks about this. They say, well, we have all these models that we can go and try and model it and try and project what it would be like. But we actually, without the evidence and being able to see, you know, things in the rocks that can tell us the story, it's hard for us to like confirm our models, if that makes sense. So the asteroid that hit the Earth apparently roughly 66 million years ago, when it wiped out the dinosaurs, was called Baptistina. That was the name of the asteroid. It was over 7 miles across. And if you took it as just kind of like a total size type of, I mean, I don't know how to explain it. If you were just say it was the size of something, they said that it's basically about the same size as Mount Everest. So it'd be like Mount Everest just came and
falling out
of
from space. Yeah.
And into the Earth's atmosphere.
Freaking crazy. I mean, that's, and how long, because it also said how fast it was falling too. Do you remember that?
So there's been a couple different things that I heard and saw, but I believe when it was in space, it was traveling around 45,000 miles per hour. Once it hit the Earth's atmosphere, I'm sure it started to slow down, and those estimates are around 20,000 miles per hour. But still, something traveling that fast through the Earth's, you know, that's bullets go what, 1,000 maybe?
Sure,
like
I am
super fast bullet. I don't know.
I don't even know.
But the interesting thing is, so they can do this by doing experiments where they actually shot a bullet into water. Okay. And then they did like one of those super high speed cameras so they could slow it way down and see what happens, right? So they know that water and the atmosphere, one's liquid and one's gas, but they react very, very similarly to an event like that. So what happened when the asteroid hit the Earth's atmosphere is that it forces all the air molecules in front of it like out of the way, like it pushes them forward. So it creates like a funnel type wake behind it, and inside of this funnel is nothing, because it's literally pushed everything out of the way and it hasn't had time to kind of like group or whatever and have it there. So if you happen to be watching this thing and be standing in the right place at the time to where you would have a vantage point where you could see this funnel, then there would be nothing there. And so you actually in the middle of the day could see right through to space. And so there would be like a circle of nighttime sky is what it would look like in the middle of the day. So you would have day and night like simultaneously.
Interesting.
So it's kind of like a weird phenomenon, but that's what they came up with.
But you know, I'm okay not ever witnessing it. So,
well, yeah. The thing I saw that on, I think they, that one might have been a Radio Lab podcast episode, and I think they cracked the joke of, well, if you were standing at the right place to see it, then you were shortly be the wrong place.
That's what I was going to say. Right place, yes, for just about a second, and then you would quickly be the wrong place.
Yeah, because before you could blink, you would already be dead. But yeah, so that was interesting. Another kind of interesting thing is, did you know that they actually could pinpoint what month time frame it was that this actually happened?
Did they talk about that?
Not in the documentary.
Oh, okay, then no.
So they figure that this happened somewhere between June and July, and they were able to decipher that because of fossils that they found in the rock that would have been there at that time. They found pollen from the lotus and from the water lily. And apparently the lotus will be like going out of flowering season around between June and July, and the water lily will be starting flowering season between June and July.
So since they found both,
Yeah, they knew that it was somewhere between June or July. Unless but that's the other thing is I don't know, what if seasons were different back then?
it's like, hi, my name's Danny the Dinosaur, and let me tell you about my worst summer ever. The summer I died. And so did everybody else.
Everyone else that I knew. That's true. That would be a crappy story. No, it's Arlen. I was trying to think of the dinosaur and the good dinosaur. When you say
I hate that movie so much. It is the dumbest, worst movie ever. Maybe not the worst movie ever, but I really hated it.
When you said Danny the Dinosaur, I was thinking at first oh yeah, isn't that the name of the dinosaur in that? But it's not. It's
not
Arlen.
even close.
I just wanted it to be, apparently. So from watching the documentary, do you remember where they found that where they think, I guess it's not even so much they think now, but they know where the asteroid hit?
New Mexico.
Close. Take off the new.
Mexico.
Yeah. So yeah, Mexico, like the Yucatan area.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I mean, going down to Mexico, I remember them telling me, I kind of knew about it, but I didn't specifically know it was this asteroid. But there's all kinds of underground caves and stuff like that in the area. I believe that are somewhat been created because of the asteroid that hit or something like that. But yeah, the asteroid hits and it displaces 40,000 cubic miles of dirt instantaneously. Mm-hmm. And at first I was 40,000, but if you start to think about it, 40,000 cubic miles, that is so much dirt. If you think about it from an area standpoint, if you dug a mile deep and made a box that was 40,000 square miles, Mm-hmm. But yeah, so this asteroid comes in, like Trav said, at 20,000 miles per hour, hits Mexico, and then displaces all that dirt. It barrels its way about 20 miles into the Earth's surface, and then creates a crater that's 124 miles across. Is the size of the initial area damage that was done. And then this is the part in the whole documentary that they talk about the peak ring. And then I'm just curious, what you thought about that.
I'm going to be honest. I did not get what the peak ring was. They kept saying it, and I think it was because I got distracted by either my child or my dog or something at the moment when they were talking about it. And then they kept talking about the peak ring. I was I kept thinking peach ring, like the gummy. And...
Which are delicious.
Yes.
But luckily the peach rings usually don't have industrial glue.
No. But yeah, so I did not really follow the peak ring. So I will let you talk about it.
And I'm going to give you, I was hoping that you had more too, because I also was distracted slightly during the peak ring stuff. But I will give you my synopsis on how I understood it.
Did you just wink at me?
If I did, I didn't mean to. It's more of I'm trying to think.
Of all the times to wink at someone, now is not the time.
I'm just going to talk to you, Trav, about this peak ring.
Wink, wink.
So anyway, yeah, but a peak ring is basically, so when the asteroid hits the Earth's surface, it displaces all of that dirt, right? Mm-hmm. And things have to go somewhere. So it basically pushes up a whole bunch of dirt and rock too, and basically creates a circular mountain range.
Yeah. So is that because when they showed it, you see the circular mountain range? There was actually an inner one and then an outer one.
Yeah.
So the inner
that's
one,
part of the way that the waves, because sound waves, it's the same with earthquakes. You kind of have those waves that go through. So I believe, something to do with that is why it creates kind of almost that double ring kind of thing. But yeah, it created mountains that for a brief moment were taller than Mount Everest. is what they said. And then ultimately, though, like much of the peak ring area, there's like 2,000 feet of rock and sediment that was all just displaced and forced there in one day.
Yeah.
Whereas typically it takes like 10,000 years to create like 3 feet of sediment and rock, you know? So it's just like all this just happened in one day. The other thing is apparently, and I thought this was interesting, is like, did you catch where the closest peak ring was to that one?
No.
On the moon.
Oh, yes, I did catch that one.
So that's the only peak ring that they know of on Earth. And then the other one, the next closest one they know of is on the moon. So apparently it just takes a large impact. And maybe luckily for us, we apparently haven't had another large impact like that since then.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, again, there are people out there that are super worried about
Just literally looking, when's the next peak ring?
So yeah, the crater ultimately that was caused, they named, and maybe you could help me with this because I think it's a Spanish name, but it's like Chicxulub crater. Spelled Chicxulub.
Where do you even have it in your notes?
It's like in the middle. It's in yellow. It's highlighted.
You have so many things in yellow. Yeah,
it's in quotations.
Chicxulub. I mean, I don't.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the name of the crater that was apparently created. So what they were able to do is this again. It seems kind of weird. I'm trying to explain why they know what they know at the same time. And so, like Trav said, there's a whole bunch of just talking about the rocks and stuff. But without just sitting here and just telling you about the rocks on a audio platform.
Yeah, very difficult to do.
Like, I'll just try to explain it as more in like a experiment, like a visual experiment that you could kind of just picture in your head. But they had a scene where they shot a glass bead out of a giant cannon. Do you remember, like, I cannot remember how big they said the cannon was, but it seemed like it was like a couple of stories long or something like that. It was like a massive cannon.
Yeah.
But it shot this teeny little bead into a pile of sand. Mm-hmm. And then they, again, with super slow-mo cameras, which Trav loves super slow-mo stuff.
I love super slow-mo stuff.
Like, you could measure the impact that this little bead would have. So then they can scale that up to see how much, like, in their estimation, would this Mount Everest-sized asteroid, how much damage would it cause when it hit the Earth, right? And so they figure that this asteroid would have caused or had the energy of 100 million megatons.
Gosh, dang, that's a lot of megatons.
When it hit. So immediately, like within seconds of it hitting, anything within 600 miles of where the asteroid hit would have been just incinerated. And then for like 1,000 miles in every direction, you would have felt gale force winds from this thing. That's like how much energy was just
dispersed from
released. And dispersed from it. But to give you context, because yes, when I hear 100 million megatons, that sounds like a lot to me, but I don't really know. Do you know what that means?
No clue.
Neither did I. So I thought I would figure it out and let you guys know. So if you had 1 megaton is equal to 100 million or 1 million tons of TNT. So that's like the ratio. So 1 million tons of TNT is 1 megaton. If you just had 2 tons, so 2 out of that 1 million, that's enough to blow up a 10-story building. And then if the bombs that they dropped on Hiroshima, the atomic bombs, those were 15,000 megatons. Or not megatons. 15,000 tons, equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. I'm like totally botching this. And then the hydrogen bomb, which is the most powerful nuke there is, that they've never used it on people. But that's the most powerful nuclear weapon that we have on Earth today. And that could punch an energy pack. That's not how you say it.
That could
Well, how would you say it, Trey?
Pack a punch?
Yeah, pack a punch.
Sounds like, what the hell are you trying to say?
I was like, that could punch a pack of energy. I could pack a punch of 1 megaton. So, 1 million tons of TNT. So basically, it would take 100 million, the equivalent of 100 million hydrogen bombs all being detonated at the same time to equal the same amount of energy that was caused by this asteroid.
Comment and let us know if you followed that. So...
I will admit that was not my finest hour.
Took him about an hour to say it.
And usually numbers are easy for me, so I don't know why I struggled so much with that. But long story short, just imagine 100 million hydrogen bombs all being detonated at once. That is how much energy that asteroid had.
Yeah, so even with that being said, in the theory that, just one asteroid hitting was not, even as large as it was not enough that would, just because of the impact, would kill everything on Earth, right? I mean, like you said, it was basically anything within a 600-mile radius was obliterated.
Yep.
And then anything within 1,000 miles of it could feel the gale force winds coming from it. But that wouldn't mean that they'd be dead or anything like that.
Yeah, they would just be like, why does it get so windy?
So you have your 600-mile radius of everything that's gone. But then what happens after that? I mean, we've already kind of talked about it. But so you have all of this ash and I just want to say fire and brimstone. It's basically what it was.
So it's funny that you actually bring it up because you're exactly right. Like the fact that you're saying this is not enough to just that event alone wasn't what took out the dinosaurs, right? So they actually have figured out how much TNT if you would need basically to blow up the entire Earth. So if you wanted to,
why would somebody? What are people thinking of?
So if you wanted to blow up the entire Earth, kind of is it the Death Star that blows up planets?
Yes.
In Star Wars, right?
Yes.
Where you actually literally watch a laser go pew, and it goes when the entire planet gets obliterated. Well, to do something similar to that, you would actually need 110 quadrillion tons of TNT, which is so basically you would need 110 million of those asteroids all hitting the Earth at the same time to create enough power that would just completely blow up the Earth.
Blow up the Earth.
So it's not even close to enough. But like you said, the asteroid impact itself is more of it's a big area, 600 miles, but it's a local event.
Yeah. But it started a chain reaction that would then pretty much affect the rest of the planet.
Yeah. So that asteroid hitting then creates that fireball that's 20,000 degrees right there in the center. And that's what's the heat of this. It's so the sun is 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's 4 times hotter than the sun was what the heat that was caused right at the epicenter where the asteroid hit. So what that does is that's enough. I mean, obviously, because it's hotter than the sun, it's enough heat that it just instantly starts to liquefy the rock that it's displacing, and then eventually turns that rock into rock vapor. So from a liquid to even a gas. So when that happens, now when you kind of go back to Newton's law, right? So when you have something go in, you have an opposite and equal reaction, right? So the asteroid forcing its way into the Earth's surface also kicks in the opposite direction all that rock vapor. So just like a jet stream in the other direction, tons and tons of rock vapor just gets shot straight up into the air. So what happens is that rock vapor eventually getting shot straight up in the air, goes and gets all the way through the atmosphere and starts now in space.
Yeah.
And so once that gets up into space, it starts to disperse, right? And it starts to slow down and lose momentum eventually. And as it does that, it also starts to cool. And once it cools, what it cooled into was actually basically little beads of glass.
Yeah.
So, do you remember this part?
I think so.
So, that cloud not only slows down and condenses into beads of glass, but it's now also spreading all around the Earth as it's kind of almost like orbiting the Earth and kind of surrounding the entire Earth, right?
Yeah.
But eventually, the Earth's gravity now gets a hold of all that glass again, all that matter, and starts pulling it back down. So now what you have, and this is the part in the story that I was explaining where like the person was standing there like looking up and they thought they saw a shooting star, and then 2 and then 3 and then hundreds, right?
Yeah.
Because basically what's happening is all these trillions and trillions of pieces of glass are now falling back down to Earth through the Earth's atmosphere. So do you remember the part of the documentary where they were talking about how they were heating up the Earth?
Well, yeah, because essentially, you have all of this hot melted rock and stuff. It gets caught there in the atmosphere and it covers it. So this is basically like in the point where in a lot of the other theories, it covers the sun. So then it actually cools the Earth, which I think in the long run it ended up doing a little bit, but in that instant it was actually heating the Earth.
So yeah, so basically, obviously, okay, when a meteorite hits the Earth's atmosphere or a rocket, right, re-enters the atmosphere, what happens to it? Like it like that's why they have the heat shields on the rockets, right?
Okay, is that what you're trying to get me to say?
Like it just it starts to burn up.
I am not a rocket scientist. I have no clue what happens to it. It comes in and it crashes.
Yeah, but that's because the friction of the air, right? So that's when like the meteor or the asteroid originally hit the Earth's atmosphere. It would have been like a fiery ball, right? So, yeah, all these little beads of glass are now re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, and they're burning up. And so when you have like a couple of things, it's not going to change the temperature of the Earth, right? But when you have trillions of these things raining down on the Earth all at once, they create, every single one that burns up creates a little bit of heat.
Yeah.
But then they all create a little bit of heat. So basically what happened is the entire Earth turned into a pizza oven.
Yeah.
Like literally. So the temperature on the surface of the Earth within just a few minutes after these glass beads started to rain down went from 100 degrees to 200 degrees to 300 degrees all the way up to what they estimate is like about 1200 degrees.
Crazy.
And so that is ultimately...
Because I cook my pizzas at 450.
Yeah, I guess I should clarify. I think this is supposed to be like an industrial pizza.
Yeah,
like that.
like the brick ovens where you where you throw the pizza in and it's just literally being cooked by a freaking flame.
So yeah, so like the pizza, just imagine the entire Earth is like one giant pizza oven. So that is actually what they speculate is what killed off the dinosaurs. Because obviously, like nothing is going to just be standing there in 1200 degrees and living.
Yeah.
Right? Like they literally just cooked.
Yep.
And were incinerated. Not only that, at 1200 degrees, all the trees and everything are going to burst into flame. So not only do you have heat from above, but now you have heat from below. So like the entire Earth basically within 2 hours was a big just flaming ball.
Because also as you're watching this documentary, you know, they kind of do a graphic overlay, and so they're out in this desert. They're in various different places, but they're out in a desert. They're like, I think in that case they were in New Mexico. I think that's why I said New Mexico in the first place. But so then they kind of give you a picture of what New Mexico actually looked like, or what that desert looked like beforehand when the dinosaurs were there, and it was very lush. It was very green.
Yeah, it was like a tropical forest.
It was essentially, just like a
jungle.
Yeah. And, you know, after this happened, I mean, everything was gone. The ecosystem just completely was obliterated. And trees, I mean, that is literally why, I mean, and still nothing is really able to continue to grow in those areas because it was just scorched. and nothing could survive in that in that atmosphere. So.
Yeah. And I think, and you're right, I think they used New Mexico because that, to them, they were like, this was far enough away that they weren't initially, like, they weren't one of the things that was just incinerated.
You could see it.
But
like, you would have been able to see
like
the
explosion
of it, but you wouldn't have been impacted. You weren't within the 600-mile radius of being obliterated by, by the asteroid. So these were the dinosaurs who were there in that area, and others similar to it that were affected by this raining glass that was coming down.
So that's what caused the death of the vast majority of the dinosaurs, was the pizza in effect. Mm-hmm. The thing that you were talking about did also occur, and as far as like you were saying that the whole Earth was basically covered with ash and something that was blocking out the sun, right?
Yeah.
So what that happened to be is like in the area of the Yucatan that it actually hit is very, very dense with gypsum, which is a type of rock. Gypsum, though, has a lot of sulfur in it. And so what happened is like that got shot up into the air as part of that rock vapor. And then when that started to settle back in the atmosphere, it's super good at reflecting sunlight. So it was as it sat in the atmosphere and just spread over the entire Earth, it was just reflecting all the sunlight back out. And so, like the Earth for the period of several months, I believe it was darker than like it would be on a moonless night. Like the entire Earth was just super dark. Mm-hmm. That caused obviously temperatures to fall. And plants obviously couldn't grow anymore. So that's where you got that effect. So like there is some truth like to the theories that we were taught as kids, I guess, that kind of happened. But instead of, I think, it being over hundreds of years, it was like over the course of like several months. Mm-hmm.
Well, and then what also happened, because they spent a portion talking about the marine life.
That was interesting.
Yeah, the dinosaurs that, like, if you guys remember in Jurassic World,
the Mesosaur.
Is that what it was? The Mesosaur. There was basically like the giant ass crocodile that came up and ate the great white shark. That was just dangling there. So like those were actual creatures. And they've actually found them. In fact, there's a portion of the documentary where we talk about, like, in New Jersey, behind this mall is where they have like this archaeological dig, and that's where they found these bones of this Mesosaur and stuff. But because like at one point in time, that whole part of the world, or what is now New Jersey was underwater. But they said, okay, well, obviously, so these animals are underwater. They're not going to be affected necessarily by the heating portion. Now, I'm sure that, water heats up, but just swim deeper, where it's cooler and things like that. But so that's the pizza oven effect did not kill those dinosaurs as much as it was what we've now talked about is the temperature change because of the ash that was just hanging there. No longer can sun get through, creating photosynthesis, and now all the marine plant life is dying out, and therefore all the other animals that feed off of that are dying, which then affects the whole food chain going forward. And so, it was obviously it was a big deal.
Yeah, from what they said, it sounds like 75% of all species went extinct basically during that time frame, which amounted to, because even though 75% of all the species, I believe they said it was like 99% of all the life that was on Earth. And then if that wasn't bad enough to go through all of that, say you were able to kind of like, you were able to survive long enough, you lived in the ocean, and you made it through the initial impact, you made it through the pizza oven effect, and you've kind of made it through like the fact that there's no sunlight for a while, Well, eventually the rain started clearing out the atmosphere, and then when you mix rain with sulfur, you get acid rain.
rain.
And so now your home is just poisoned with acid rain. So it's just like you could not.
Just not a very good few months. But you know what? As they talked about in the documentary, after all is said and done, there were still creatures that survived. And when you throw in the the evolution and how just things began to change and evolve and just that's an adapt. Obviously, you end up with what we have now, which is amazing. I mean, that's millions of years. That's 66 million years of change and adaptation.
Yeah. But
from that one cataclysmic event. But yeah.
Like you, I think what you were trying to get at is if it wasn't for that, then maybe mammals wouldn't have been able to become the dominant species on Earth, and ultimately they became us, right?
Thank you, asteroid.
and that kind of brings me, and Trav and I had this discussion briefly the other night, but basically, yeah. So things that were able to survive were things that were probably deep enough in the ocean or bodies of water that they could actually kind of escape most of this and survive down there long enough. But also animals and creatures that could kind of burrow down into the ground, because the Earth is actually a surprisingly good insulator. So if you were able to just burrow a few inches down into the ground, you actually could have survived, which is why I think they say like a lot of the animals that survived were like these small rodent-like mammals, birds that had like eggs that were laid in the ground, and that's why they say birds are just direct descendants of dinosaurs, or actually are dinosaurs in a way. Crocodiles could have buried themselves in the mud, and that's why they're still around. So that's how you still have some of these species or animals that were around
that have close ties. Yeah.
So, and then they did find one, and this was on something else. It wasn't in the documentary, but they found like this creature that they've been able to model back, and they're like, okay, we think that this is the animal that's the ancestor to all humans, and it's apparently like this little, rodent-looking animal. They say it has fleshy ears, it has like a long, like beak-shaped nose, and then it has like a lighter color underbelly. I don't know how they know all this. They just modeled it apparently after. But yeah, so Radiolab, which is the for anyone who hasn't listened to that, they do a really, really good job of telling the story. But they were given the opportunity to name this animal so they decided, this is really cool. Well, we want to crowdsource it because we want like the public to basically have a say on what we call this ancient animal that was apparently our great ancestor to all of us, Mm-hmm. And so they went through, they had all these voting. It sounded to me like it was almost like a NCAA bracket type voting system.
March Madness.
But just take a guess. What do you think the winner was?
I have no.
I know. I don't think you're going to get it. I'm just saying, what would you name an animal like that?
It looked like a mouse. So that's the only thing that I can come up with.
They called it a Schrödinger.
A Schrödinger.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the name of it. So kudos to people and their ability to name things.
I think we also have to kind of mention that, this is just one idea of, we're definitely not going to get into the whole thing of, do we actually believe that we come from this rodent or not? What are our thoughts on evolution and the existence of man and things like that?
I mean, that would be a whole nother episode.
I think that's a whole other series. I mean, that's a huge question. You get into a lot of things, but just based off of this story and theory of how the dinosaurs became extinct and how life continued on after that. That is one theory, but none of us were back there. None of us were there in 66 million years ago. So nobody can say for sure, but all they can do is just look at look at the rock, look at nature and the evidence that they can see, and that's what, their conclusion is.
And that is, because if you remember, again, Trav and I talked about this earlier, but the way that I thought was a way to explain it was, because I don't know how much of it is just like a straight line, right? Like, we have this Schrödinger rodent and it just becomes us, right? Like, that just seems like, yes, I get like there's like evolution to a certain degree that ultimately ended up as humans, right? But I picture it more as like a tree branch or something like that, where you have this one thing, but then maybe this Schrödinger rodent evolved into like these 5 different types of animals, like in one way or another, and those all evolved into these 5 different types of animals, and eventually over time it just got to be the part where we got lucky that we ended up being humans, if that makes sense. Like, it's just like trial and error, I guess, through nature.
But all right, well, is there anything left that you have before we close this up?
So I just wanted to give the update of what's happened since that documentary came out. So the documentary, I believe, came out in 2017, and that's been kind of the predominant theory for the last few years. But there was one issue, and so there's something they actually talked about in the documentary called the KT line. I don't know if you remember. It was like this thin, like strip of.
Yep, and they only find dinosaurs under the KT line. Yeah.
So the KT line is basically about an inch thick strip of rock, I guess.
Yeah.
You could say, that they figure was deposited there on the day that the asteroid hit. So that was like the fallout from the asteroid. And there's some compelling evidence to why, because one, if you look under a microscope, you can actually see like the small glass beads, remnants of them left that would have fallen back, the ones that actually made it back onto the surface of the Earth. Another is it's chock full of iridium, and iridium is something that you won't find on the surface of the Earth hardly anywhere else, but it's actually something that's super highly concentrated in asteroids. So the level of iridium in the KT line is like 100 times more than you would expect to find. So like that's pretty compelling evidence that like, this KT line was legit, like the line that's telling you where the asteroid hit and like when it happened, right?
Yeah.
And then like you said, they have not been able to find any dinosaurs above the KT line. All of the fossils they find are below the KT line, which is why they say, so like dinosaurs were wiped out before, like at this point, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no more that we could find above it. Well, there's one other like little issue with that, and that is they've never found a dinosaur within 3 meters under the KT line. So there's like this 9 to 10 foot space where they've never found any dinosaurs yet. And so because of that, you have a subsect of scientists that say, well, then if you can't find any like right underneath it, like literally right underneath it, then we're going to assume the dinosaurs were going extinct or did go extinct even before
that.
Yeah, the asteroid hit. So the asteroid didn't actually kill them. They were already dead or dying off as a species. So,
well, screw this episode.
Well, but then that brings it to the final thing. So this is what this guy found in North Dakota. There's a site there called Tanis, was what he named it. But it was on private land. This guy found it. He's like, you know what? Like, you can come up here and excavate if you want, because honestly, like, all I found is like these fossils of fish, but they're brittle and they just fall apart and stuff. So whatever. So this guy by the name of Robert De Palma, who actually has never graduated, so he's not actually a doctor, but he's been a student for a really long time. He's 37 years old. Kind of reminds me of myself, because it took me freaking forever to finish school too. But he's the one that kind of was invited up to go up there. He went up there and started looking around, and long story short, the basic findings that he's found, and now he's published a paper on it, and all kinds of articles have come out earlier this year on it. But he found what basically looks like a massive grave site where they can tell that there's a whole bunch of sediment, several feet worth of sediment laid down in one day. And that's because they figure that when the asteroid hit, it created shock waves, right?
Yeah.
The shock waves then, like, so for example, there's a giant earthquake in Japan a couple years ago, and that caused these 5-foot waves to just appear out of nowhere in like Denmark or something like that. So the same kind of idea they thought here is like, oh, the shock wave happens, it travels through the earth, and then actually cause these huge, because it's so much bigger, these like 30, 35-foot waves just to crash through this entire like river basin area. And so not only, the reason they can tell this is because this mass grave has freshwater fish in it, has saltwater animals in it, it has dinosaurs in it, it has like trees in it, it has like all these different, like has birds in it, mammals in it, like all these different animals all mushed together in this one area. The fish they can find, so usually when they find a fish fossil, it's laying flat.
Yeah.
These ones, they're actually finding them vertically with their mouths open. And so they're figuring like the mud came in and just like they were just trapped and they were trying to breathe. And they were like forced in like these vertical stacks. And so it's just like, for this reason, basically they're thinking that this could be the thing that proves that actually dinosaurs did become extinct from the asteroid.
Okay, well, we had a bit of a scare there. We thought that it wasn't the asteroid, but it is the asteroid now. So this episode is relevant again. So, but
so in the matter of like 5 minutes, you guys went from like, oh, to like, no, to, oh,
yay. So, all right. Well, that's what happened to the dinosaurs. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening to this. Hope you were educated. And then go and check out that documentary, The Day the Dinosaurs Died, on Netflix. It's definitely interesting. And
also check out the Radio Lab episode
podcast
as well. Podcast. I believe it's called like Dino Redux.
Dino Redux.
How do you say that? Like, because it's redo.
Redo.
But it's like the French version of like number 2.
I guess. I don't know. I can't speak French. But you can find us on any social media platform pretty much. Just search for QCode Podcast. We also have a website at qcodepodcast.com. You can check us out on YouTube. Now, we just are basically just posting these audio episodes there. But if that's the platform you wish to listen to, you can subscribe to our channel and hit the bell there so you know when we post a new one. And make sure to comment, leave us a review, and that should be it. So we thank you again, guys, for listening, and we'll catch you next week.